Where is this league right now? Because it's expanding. The commissioner is leaving. We don't know who the next commissioner is going to be. So where are they? Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Paul. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's interesting time in the Big 12 country, that's for sure. I mean, you've got your two flagship programs playing in the College World Series / SEC Invitational plus Notre Dame and Stanford right now as we speak. And it looks like they're going to be there, at least right now, through the length of their current contract with no early exit to the SEC. So you've got the SEC debating earlier this month about whether they want to go to an 8 or 9 game conference schedule when Texas, Oklahoma get in. You've got the American Athletic Conference orchestrating exit fees to get their newcomers in and have their defectors get to the Big 12 as soon as possible. And then you've also got a commissioner search on top of it. And it doesn't sound like there's clarity imminent as far as who the next Big 12 commissioner is going to be. I think it's going to not come for at least another month, and I think that might even be an optimistic timeline.
Why does it take so long to find somebody to fill a pretty good job?
I might push back on that right now, Paul. I'm not sure how good of a job it is, and I think that's part of what might be complicating the situation right now. I mean, I don't think most Power 5 jobs, yes, in general, are great jobs. You're getting paid at least $3 million a year. You don't have to deal with the campus politics. You have a much better job than most athletic directors, at least at the Power 5 level, would have. I think with the Big 12 right now, you just don't know what kind of league you're getting. I mean, basketball-wise, hey, it's a phenomenal league. They've won the last 2 national championships. They were a Virginia last-second heave from winning 3 with 3 different schools with Texas Tech in 2019. There's a lot of good stuff going on the field and on the court in the Big 12. Not so much in the courts, however, with Texas and Oklahoma leaving. I mean, when you look at the upcoming media rights renegotiations that are going to happen for the Big 12, I really don't know what the market for that product's going to be without those 2 big brands there. And that, I think, gives a lot of pause to a lot of people who maybe a year ago would have been very interested in this job.
So let me pivot from that to the bigger question in college athletics. We know where the SEC is. We also know where the Big Ten is going. We're talking about mega deals. But that leaves everyone else. And if the SEC and the Big Ten are light years ahead, how does the Big 12, Pac-12, or even the ACC compete?
That's the $1 million question, probably the $1 billion question more accurately right now, Paul. I mean, it's, and I quoted someone in that story saying, essentially, what are the Clemson and the Florida States of the world supposed to do when even the Northwesterns of the world are going to be making $50 million more annually from their media rights deal, right? Like, there's just such an imbalance there. And I led off the story by essentially talking about how monumental Dabo Swinney's contract was 3 years ago when he got a $9 million a year deal. And right now that's among his peers, that's average, right? I mean, the $9 million club is not that exclusive anymore. Jimbo Fisher's there, Brian Kelly's there, Mel Tucker, Ryan Day. I am sure Kirby Smart will be there whenever they officially announce his deal. Lincoln Riley, according to my sources, is there with his new USC deal, which is a private school. I just think at some point, if Clemson, say, for example, is keeping up competitively at a national championship level, it just becomes harder and harder to maintain, maybe not your head coach, but everything else, right? Like, they just lost their $2 million assistants. And if their new coordinators end up being as good as Tony Elliott and Brent Venables were, they're going to be in demand as well. And I just think that has a domino multiplying effect year after year after year. And when you look at the ACC and the deal they've signed right now for the ACC network, I mean, that goes through 2035, 36. Now, that came with a grant of rights that would make it pretty prohibitive for any conference member to leave for another conference anytime soon. But at some point, rubber's going to meet the road, right? Like, the deterioration of the price of the grant of rights exit fees, so to speak, versus the amount of money you would be putting yourself in position to make as part of the SEC or Big Ten is just going to be, I think, too much for some of these top-tier athletic programs to really withstand. And I think eventually there's going to have to be a reckoning.
Yeah, well, Matt, I realize you're not a soothsayer, but you talk to people who are plugged in. What happens? Because the imbalance is coming. It's coming very quickly. I think whenever that Big Ten deal is announced, anyone who's not aware is going to be sobering up very quickly. What does the future look like for college sports other than those 2 super conferences?
Yeah, Paul, I mean, we've heard different power players in this industry throw out different theories. I know Jack Swarbrick, the Notre Dame athletic director, told Sports Illustrated he essentially sees a break-off, if you will, once these media rights deals expire about 10 years from now. Whether it's Oregon, I'm paraphrasing here, Oregon Ducks Inc., Notre Dame Fighting Irish Inc. Some of these bigger football schools are going to have to make a decision about what they want to be and what they want to do with their athletic programs. The more practical one and more probably imminent one, in my opinion, is what Gene Smith, the Ohio State athletic director, has put out there, which is essentially FBS football should break off from the NCAA and run its own governance structure, preferably under the umbrella of the College Football Playoff or some other third party. And it almost makes too much sense when you look at it, right? I mean, this is a sport that has grown way too big for its NCAA britches. I mean, there's no enforcement staff. Rules are laughable right now. And you have the NCAA, this governing body, which, by the way, is also looking for its next leader, and I don't think that's happening anytime soon either, is in charge of not just the Notre Dames and Alabamas of the world. They're in charge of the Division III schools and the water polo teams and the swimming teams, and they have this kind of one-size-fits-all approach that just is not practical in this current environment, especially when you look at the financial landscape for some of those bigger schools. So I do think, especially when you look at the fact that college football has essentially already outsourced its postseason to a third party for the last 100 years or so, to the bowl system and to the playoff, I definitely think that's doable. And the more and more people you talk to, the more and more agreement, which is not all that common in this business, as you know, Paul, the more and more agreement you seem to hear everyone be in when it comes to breaking off, at least as a football entity, and doing its own thing.